What a win. What a team. Early enrollee, true freshman Malachi Toney has just been immortalized into the amazing history of the Miami versus Florida State rivalry.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
State champs, rivalry game champs. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Post Game on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're live right now, so smash that like button, subscribe. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. We have so much to break down after the Miami Hurricanes 28-22 victory in Tallahassee. Hurricanes went into the Doak. It was loud. It was rowdy, as you would expect. First road game of the season for Miami, and they were able to lean on their playmakers to get that win. Question now, and that's going to be answered in a few hours when the new AP poll comes out. Are the Miami Hurricanes the top team in America? A lot of you, a lot of us think so. We'll see what the AP voters have to say about it at around 2 p.m. here on Sunday. We'll talk about the versatility because the Hurricanes really are a pick-your-poison team. They can beat you in a number of different ways, whether it be ground and pound like we've seen in the past, or explosive passing game, which was a big difference that we saw last night in Tallahassee. So let's talk about the top performers in a win. And I know it was like a tale of three quarters versus a tale of the final quarter. We will talk about all of it, but the most important thing, Miami dominated for the majority of that game, and they come away in a road victory. By the way, Miami wins the game by 6 points. Should have been a lot more. The game wasn't really that close. They still managed to cover the 4.5-point spread. So there is that. And I wanted to lead off with Malachi Toney because, folks, it's not lost on me just how impactful it is to have someone who just turned 18 years old a couple of weeks ago, someone who should still be in high school right now. Malachi Toney reclassified and left American Heritage a year early to be a Miami Hurricane right now. You're telling me a just turned 18-year-old playing in the first road game of his college career, playing at a ranked Florida State Seminoles, goes out there and dominates the game the way that Malachi Toney did. He is the most electric true freshman player in the entire country right now. America is taking notice, and if they weren't taking notice before last night, they're taking notice now. And when you think about, so many over the years, over the decades, right, guys like Jeremy Shockey, Willis McGahee, Clinton Portis, Michael freaking Irvin, people who have really taken over, made big impactful plays in the Miami-Florida State rivalry and became immortalized in Hurricanes history because of that. Because this rivalry is so significant. You make plays, you win games in this rivalry, people never forget you. We'll never forget the name Darrell Langham because of that catch that he made from our friend of the show, Malik Rozier, in that 2017 game. We're never going to forget Malachi Toney. Now, Toney, for the next 3 years is going to give us, I'm sure, so many more memories for us never to forget this young man. But against Florida State, 7 catches, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it could have been a lot more than that from Mally. He had another long touchdown catch that was overruled due to an illegal motion by one of his teammates, had nothing to do with Toney. And he also Malachi hauled in a deep ball from Carson Beck on Miami's first drive that was really close. Went kind of through his fingertips. He could have been closer to 200 yards and possibly 3 touchdowns on the day. And one of my favorite of the many really good social media posts last night was from Malachi Toney's mother, who pointed out that, according to her, it's no longer Tallahassee. It's now Malahassee. And her son, Malachi Toney, was one of the top graded Miami Hurricanes in that game, according to Pro Football Focus. And, folks, and we're going to talk about C.J. Daniels as well, who also was on the receiving end of 2 Carson Beck touchdowns in the game. You think about how well Miami recruited in the case of a guy like Malachi Toney, getting him into the University of Miami and getting him ready to play, start, and dominate as an early enrollee true freshman. You also think about the impact of Miami's transfer portal at the wide receiver position. To have a guy like 6-year senior CJ Daniels, who I think is now up to 5 touchdown catches on the year after grabbing 2 yesterday. He and Malachi Toney, an early enrollee true freshman, they're like 5 or 6 years apart. They have been the 2 most reliable targets for Beck so far in this season. And speaking of the true freshman impact, it wasn't just Malachi Toney. Bryce Fitzgerald, true freshman safety out of Miami Columbus. He grabbed his 3rd career interception in 5 games at the U. That was the first takeaway against little Tommy Castellanos. Bryce Fitzgerald grabs that interception on a 4th down play, returns the interception 43 yards, and then on the very next play, Miami runs that flea flicker, Carson Beck 44 yards to Malachi Toney for the touchdown. True freshman to true freshman, 2 consecutive plays. Goes to show you, hey, I know Mario is very into recruiting, if you guys aren't aware. Top high school players around the country. You see, if you come to Miami, you're going to have the opportunity to make an impact if you earn it. And if you work hard, you can make an impact in your first season the way guys like Bryce Fitzgerald and Malachi Toney are. We got to talk about Carson Beck. Without his poise and without the big-time throws he made, Miami maybe doesn't win that game. Carson Beck provided the professional veteran presence that we needed. 0 interceptions thrown, 0 turnover-worthy plays. We talked for the last 2 weeks when Miami's going on the road for the first time. And Doak Campbell Stadium is not a picnic to play. And although Miami does have an above 500 record at Doak, so the Hurricanes historically have dealt with that annoying war chant pretty well over the years, yesterday included, but it's not an easy place for an opposing quarterback to go. And Carson Beck pushed all the right buttons and didn't make any mistakes. That's what you get from a veteran like him who's played in Tuscaloosa. He's played in Austin, Texas. He's played in all the toughest road environments in the SEC and just played now in arguably the toughest road environment in the ACC. And Carson Beck goes 20 for 27, 241 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, completed 74% of his passes in that win. We mentioned the touchdown passes. 2 of them were thrown to Malachi Toney. 2 of them were thrown to CJ Daniels. I like how Miami was able to exploit the mismatch of CJ Daniels up against a specific Florida State corner who's probably the weak spot of their defense. Shannon Dawson did his homework. And when we talk about the defense, it's very clear that Corey Heatherman did his homework as well in that one. And listen, that performance yesterday by Carson, and it's another signature win for the Hurricanes. This is now the 3rd time this season Miami has beaten a ranked team. For all the people who bashed Miami's resume last year, they didn't beat anybody ranked last year. Hurricanes already have 3 wins against teams that were ranked at the time they played them. Miami also has a win against Florida, who was ranked at the start of the season. And Florida, by the way, they're trying to save Billy Napier's job. That's what they do up there in Gainesville. They got a big home win against Texas yesterday. So maybe that Miami win against the Gators is aging a little bit better than some people thought it would. Miami already has a resume, potentially the best resume in college football right now. And a game like that for Carson Beck can only help his Heisman campaign. Because we fondly remember the quarterbacks who beat Florida State, and Carson Beck just did that. And okay, a big thing, when I talk about pick your poison, okay? Miami, or I should say FSU, they were prepared for Miami's rushing attack. Tony White's defense had some success limiting Miami on the ground. But if you take that away, Miami has an answer. Pick your poison. If Mark Fletcher isn't going to be able to gouge the opponent, Carson Beck is going to be hitting explosive passing plays to CJ Daniels, Malachi Toney, and company. And then defensively, I give Corey Heatherman so much credit. I know it wasn't perfect, right? Miami gave up some plays in the opening Florida State drive. Florida State had a lot of success, too much success in the 4th quarter. We still come away with the dub, thank goodness. But outside of that opening drive by Florida State, I thought Miami was a little bit juiced up and maybe overcommitting to some things. The Hurricanes were patient against all the gimmicks, all the misdirections, and the multiple flea flickers that came from that Gus Malzahn offense. I loved the play when Justin Scott snuffed out Mekhi Danzy in the backfield. Even though Scott didn't make the tackle, he slowed down the fastest Florida State Seminole and gave enough time to his teammates to swarm and stop that play for a loss of a couple yards. Those are the sorts of things, folks. You prepare 2 weeks for that because Miami had the bye week. You prepare 2 weeks on film to go up against all the nuances and all the trickeration of that Gus Malzahn offense, and Miami was very much ready for it. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the top defensive performers. In fact, the top graded Miami Hurricane, it was a defensive player, but it's not the one you expect. It's not the guy who's been consistently, and who still played really well yesterday, by the way. It's not the guy who's consistently been the highest graded Hurricane all season long. We'll tell you who was the best Miami Hurricane on the field. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. State champions for the second straight year. Let's soak it in. Let's enjoy it. Miami Hurricanes just beat Florida State 28-22, and we are only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance in endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Guys, I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. The swivel screen is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. My vibe today is very high, by the way. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. And by the way, if you're watching us live right now, smash that like button, share the link, tell your friends we're talking Miami Hurricanes. We're talking Canes against Florida State. Miami goes into Tallahassee. Listen, I haven't forgotten that Florida State fans, even after losing to Virginia the previous week, we're talking trash for 2 weeks. Miami is overrated. Miami ain't ish. Miami's not going to come in here and win in Tallahassee. We're going to get our season back on track. We're going to be ACC champions, rivalry game champions. And then what happens last night? Miami gets the huge win at the Doak. We're pumped about it. So the top graded Cane last night, and folks, well-deserved. This young man has been dominating all season long. It wasn't Rueben Bain last night, although he was close. Rueben Bain, spoiler alert, was the second highest graded Miami Hurricane. It was safety Jakobe Thomas. Elite 92 Pro Football Focus grade. He had a sack. He had an interception. He had a forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, and had an elite coverage grade of 93. That's versatility right there. Jakobe Thomas can hit you in the mouth, and he can also cover you. He's been really one of Miami's 2 or 3 most impactful transfers this year, and that includes Carson Beck. Like Jakobe Thomas, we've talked about him after every single game, after every single win Miami has had. Miami is now 5-0, by the way. Jakobe Thomas is someone who has continually stood out on film and made big plays. I don't know, how Tennessee allowed that guy to leave Knoxville, because I feel like he could be very useful to them, but I'm certainly glad he's here. Because, again, he probably would have been a starter in Tennessee this year. He's a starter in Miami. He's making the most of it for a team that could very well be the best team in America right now. But, yeah, Rueben Hurricane Bain was elite again. Bain put up 11 quarterback pressures against Florida State. That's tied for the most in a single game all season. And Bain, this is like almost double the amount of snaps he usually plays. He's usually in Miami's defense was on the field for a lot of plays on Saturday night. So Bain, usually his snap count is around like somewhere between 45 to 50. Played 76 snaps, by far his most of the season. Akheem Mesidor also played 76 snaps, by the way. Mesidor had a fantastic game as well. Mesidor had 2 tackles for loss and a sack in the game. So Rueben Bain and Akheem Mesidor, they are the best pass rushing tandem in college football and among the greats in Miami history. And I was already listening to, you remember, guys, a couple weeks ago, We had Dalton Wasserman from ProFootballFocus.com, who is not only a PFF analyst, but he's also the co-host of the PFF College Football Show. He and Max Chadwick, and they already put their post-game episode out about Miami against Florida State, and both of them continue to bang the drum for Rueben Bain, who has been the top-graded player at this point in all of America and should be getting Heisman Trophy consideration. It's not going to win it. I would say probably not going to win it. I mean, listen, Bain is not going to win the Heisman Trophy because they don't give it to edge rushers. They give it to, players who touch the football a lot, quarterbacks, usually skill position players. But Rueben Bain has been the most outstanding player in America, regardless of position so far. And he could potentially be the number 1 overall draft pick in this upcoming NFL draft. And he wreaked his usual havoc. Another defensive player who really stood out in a positive way, Keionte Scott. It's been another one of Miami's most impactful transfer players, the former Auburn defensive back who's doing it now in Coral Gables and do it in Tallahassee last night. Keionte Scott led the Hurricanes with 11 tackles and get this, 0 missed tackles credited to him in the game. And he also had a fumble recovery and a tackle for loss in the game. And when we're talking defensive players, I also want to give a shout out to Wesley Besaint, who not only had a good game, I think he had 8 tackles in the game, but Wesley Besaint recovered 2 of the 3 onside kicks that FSU attempted. They went 0 for 3 in the onside kicks. Wes Besaint recovered 2 of those. So Wesley Besaint was Saint Wesley last night, making sure Miami didn't give Florida State any of those extra offensive possessions in this one. And listen, I know, the fourth quarter, Florida State scored 19 points when they were down 25-3. I was talking with Don Bailey Jr. after the game yesterday, and he pointed out, for as frustrating as the fourth quarter was at times, you never actually felt like Miami was going to lose the game. Florida State obviously was trying to they were trying to be like the New England Patriots against the Atlanta Falcons and come back from a 28-3 deficit, but they're just, there wasn't enough there for them. Miami had dominated too much of the game. But no matter what you thought of the fourth quarter, guys, I'm 41 years old. I've been watching Miami versus Florida State. I've been watching rivalry games for way too long to ever apologize for a win. Do you remember things like the 4th and 14 game? It was not long ago. Do you remember the block at the Rock? Do you remember just 3 years ago when Florida State came to Miami and beat us 45-3, a couple years after we beat them 52-10? Dominating a game for 60 minutes against a good team at their stadium is not easy to do. Our team isn't perfect, but I don't know whose is. I think Miami, even if they're not perfect, probably the best team in the country right now. And yeah, our defense got gassed late in the game. Florida State finally started hitting on some of the explosive plays that we completely took away from them for 3 quarters. It was a sloppy fourth quarter, but Miami closed the game out. It's a 60-minute game, and we dominated for at least 45 minutes of those. Now, in terms of the way that the game ended, you look at probably the 2 most critical stats on either side. Florida State, in losing the game, the stat that hurt them most was the turnover margin. They committed 3 turnovers. Miami didn't commit any. So credit to Miami for winning that turnover margin +3. For Florida State, you lose the turnover margin -3, you're not beating a team like Miami. So that was the most telling stat for Florida State, was 3 turnovers to Miami's 0. And thank you, Miami, for taking care of the football. That's why you've got a veteran like Carson Beck. That's why, whether you're talking about 18-year-old true freshmen or 23-year-old 6-year seniors, you have players who take care of the football and don't put it on the turf. Thank you for Miami for doing that. Now, the stat on the Miami side that I think had the most to do with allowing Florida State to have that big fourth quarter, people could talk about conservative this and that. I also think you need to execute, whether you're conservative or not. But the stat that I think was the most telling, penalties. Miami penalized 13 times for 114 yards. And most of those penalties, the bad ones, the costly ones, the 15-yarders, right? I mean, Miami got called for, unfortunately, Dylan Day got ejected for a targeting on a punt return for Florida State. Miami had a couple of late hits out of bounds, a couple of them on the same Florida State drive that led to Florida State scoring a touchdown. This is the story of stuff. Thankfully, This happened in a game where Miami was up by so much, it was almost impossible to lose at that point, especially when you're going up against an offense that's not exactly built to play from behind. I mean, that first touchdown drive Florida State had took like 5.5 minutes off the clock. Like, they needed to score quickly. They're not capable of doing that with little Tommy Castellanos and a Gus Malzahn offense. They're not built for that, thankfully, and Miami knew that. They knew that they weren't built for that. But 13 penalties for 114 yards. I think that's the big point of emphasis that needs to be cleaned up. Miami's got a bye week coming up, and as Mario Cristobal says it, Carson Beck has said it, bye weeks are not vacations for this team. You know, you don't go fishing, you don't go on trips, you don't go out to the mountains during the bye week. Bye weeks are work weeks, and the Hurricanes are going to have an extra week to prepare for a kind of Jekyll and Hyde Louisville team. I don't really know what to expect from them 2 Fridays from now, but you know, a point of emphasis is going to be playing with more discipline and closing out games because, you know, never really felt close, but the game should not have come down to a 6-point margin of victory. Miami should have won that game by 20 or more points. That's the bottom line. So I know cleaning up those penalties is going to be a big focus coming up. So is Miami actually, and we're, you know, the new Associated Press rankings, the AP poll is going to come out in about 2.5 hours. Is Miami actually the number 1 team in America now? We will find out, and I will make the case. We'll also look at a crazy ACC and where Miami sits in that. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home. Whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved chain that's been rooted in your community for years, these businesses are what bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Guys, I love when the food trucks get together in my neighborhood. My son and I, we go crazy on those tacos and on those pizza slices and Philly cheesesteaks. And all of these businesses are running on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Oh, we're also brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, the 1 o'clock games are coming up today in the NFL. I hope you had a great weekend with the college games. The NFL season is here. FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I build parlays. I try player props. I've even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure to check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I are going to have a new episode coming up on Monday. Let's take a look, by the way. It was kind of it's always a crazy weekend in the ACC, by the way, but this one was no exception, okay? So Miami, and guys, I've been covering Miami long enough, even though I feel this roster, this mentality is different from a lot of the other teams we've had in the recent past. I'm not going to get too crazy anointing ACC championship or anything like that. We know how difficult it is to win the ACC. Miami is off to a 1-0 start in conference play. And on paper, Miami looks like the best team in the ACC, and it's not particularly close. In fact, the team you beat last night, Florida State, might be the second best team in the ACC, but Florida State is now 0-2 in conference. Very difficult for them to get to Charlotte in December with 2 conference losses already. You think about the teams that played for the championship game last year. Clemson was 7-1 in ACC play. SMU was 8-0 in conference. So there was no room for 2-loss conference teams. It could play out that way again this year. So Miami needs to keep winning. Another big-time result here is 24th ranked Virginia. They just upset Florida State last week. They go to Louisville and pull off another upset, this time on the road. In overtime, Virginia beats Louisville 30-27. So Virginia is 3-0 in ACC play now. That's a team that's looking like, they may slip up somewhere, but that's looking like a dark horse to possibly make that ACC championship game. Same thing with Georgia Tech, who didn't play this weekend, but Georgia Tech is unbeaten in conference. And I'm pretty sure I have this correct, that none of the three, Miami, Virginia, and Georgia Tech, none of the three play each other. So you could get to a situation where if they're all, unbeaten in conference or have the same conference record, you could have a three-way tiebreaker where only two of Miami, Virginia, and Georgia Tech get to Charlotte. And now the tiebreaker, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's not ranking. So even if Miami was the highest ranked of those teams, that's not the tiebreaker. Can you imagine if Miami, UVA, and Georgia Tech all had the same conference record and somehow it's Georgia Tech versus UVA in the ACC championship game? I feel like the ACC would deserve that if it came down to that scenario. But Georgia Tech, UVA are teams that are unbeaten in conference for what that's worth. Clemson got their first ACC win. North Carolina is the slump buster. That team is awful. That's who Clemson beat. But Clemson's 1-2 in the ACC. So they're practically eliminated the way that Florida State is already. And SMU beat up on Syracuse. Syracuse is really bad now that they lost Steve Angeli. You didn't realize how much their starting quarterback meant to them until he's been out these last couple games. SMU won 31-18. I don't think SMU is that good of a team. They look kind of shaky, non-conference, but they are 1-0 in the ACC. They got to the championship game last year, so that may be a team to watch out for towards the end. And Duke is unbeaten in another team that didn't have a very good non-conference showing, but they beat Cal 45-21 last night, and Duke is 3-0 in the ACC. So you've got a handful of teams in conference who are still unbeaten in conference play very early in the season, and that goes for Miami as well. Miami still has 7 ACC games left to play, so a lot of work still to be done, and I know that's going to be the emphasis for Mario Cristobal. So the other thing, 2:00 today, we're going to have the new AP rankings. Miami is currently, until the new rankings come out, Miami is number 3, right? You remember they're behind Ohio State. Ohio State, wouldn't surprise me if Ohio State stays at number 1 because they are the defending national champs. I think there's a certain amount of leeway the voters give them because of that. And Oregon, who, surpassed Miami last week with their win over Penn State. Penn State, by the way, they lost to UCLA, who was previously winless. That's freaking embarrassing for them, like really embarrassing. So Miami has been behind those two teams. And I got to tell you, and I don't really care one way or the other, because whether Miami comes out of this weekend ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, it doesn't change the fact that you're undefeated and you've got 7 more games to win. And if you accomplish your goals, and that is win every game in front of you, there's nothing, if you accomplish those goals, that can keep you out of the college football playoff. So being ranked 1st, 3rd, 50th does not change my outlook on the season. But I have noticed, seeing the social media posts of close to a dozen different people who have AP votes. Now, literally hundreds of people vote on this, but in hearing from dozens of people who do vote on this, I'm hearing most all of them actually say they've got Miami now number 1 on their ballot coming out of this weekend. And here, this was perfectly explained by a social media account called CFB Kings, who explains the 3 resumes of the top 3 teams. So you've got Ohio State. Their best win is against Texas, who just lost to Florida, and now Texas should be unranked. Ohio State's second best win is against 4-1 Washington. That's their resume so far. Oregon's resume, outside of Penn State, they've played a bunch of nobodies, and Oregon's best win was an overtime win against Penn State, who just lost to winless UCLA. Penn State should no longer be ranked. Then you've got Miami's resume. Miami's best win, probably last night, beat number 18 Florida State on the road. Florida State has a 14-point win over Alabama. Miami's second best win against number 21 Notre Dame, who just beat Boise State 28-7 yesterday. Miami's third best win against 4-1 USF, who was ranked 18th at the time, and USF is a top G5 contender for the CFP. Miami's fourth best win is against Florida, who just beat Texas yesterday. Texas was ranked number 7. So if you compare the resumes, pretty clear. It's pretty clean cut. that Miami probably should be number one. Now, will the AP voters actually do that by majority, right? You heard from that AP voter a couple weeks ago who apparently doesn't even watch the games. She didn't know that USF beat Florida. She kept Florida ranked, didn't rank USF. So I don't know if the majority of these AP voters are living on the same planet that the rest of us live in, but assuming enough of them do, Miami could come out of this weekend ranked number one. I'm not even sure I want that, though. It's like I kind of prefer when Miami has somebody or something to look up to, something to feel slighted about, some reason to have a chip on the shoulder. That's always where I'm at as a, longtime, lifelong supporter of this program. So I don't even know if I want to be number one heading out of this weekend. But if you compare the resumes, I think Miami should be the team to have that. All right, folks, it's been a lot of fun. By the way, drop your MVPs in the comments below. Some of the players I mentioned, Malachi Toney had a monster game, and him doing this as an early enrollee true freshman, it never ceases to amaze me. Carson Beck, I thought was fantastic, and his performance should be talked about more. And Beck, by the way, finally got to play on a dry field with no rain. First time this year, first time this season, Carson Beck wasn't getting poured on by rain, and he goes out there, throws 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, completes 74% of his passes, no turnover-worthy throws. That was a big-time performance. Jakobe Thomas, highest graded Cane, gets a game ball in this one, the safety. Akheem Mesidor, Rueben, Bain, Keionte Scott. You guys let me know your game balls and your MVPs below. We got a huge, huge week coming up, guys. We're going to talk so much more about it. I was talking with the truth teller. He's chomping at the bit. He's going to join. He can't wait till Tuesday. He's going to join us tomorrow for a bonus Truth Teller Monday. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On Canes. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we will talk to you again tomorrow. You know what? If Miami is number one later today, we'll probably talk to you again on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.